You freed the captive wolf hatchlings, Alien Queen roared. My 10 elite warriors surround you. Kale crouched low in the shadows of the dense Zorinthian forest, his breath misting in the cold, alien air. The towering trees, their leaves glimmering faintly under the planet's twin moons, whispered softly as the wind moved through them. Kale's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. He had heard rumors of the creature cages hidden deep in the forest, but he had never expected to find anything so small and helpless, yet so alive with energy. The forest floor was uneven, tangled with roots and vines that seemed to move almost on their own. Kale stepped carefully, mindful of the faint hum of sensors buried beneath the soil. He had discovered the mercenaries' base by accident, following a trail of strange tracks that led him away from his exploration mission. Now he had to be careful. Every rustle in the underbrush could mean danger. Ahead, hidden behind a thicket of glowing ferns, was a cave. The entrance was reinforced with alien metal bars, and faint whimpers echoed from within. Kale's stomach tightened. Inside were small creatures, no bigger than human children, their fur glowing faintly in patterns that shifted like liquid light. The creatures' eyes were wide with fear, and despite their small size, Kale could feel a power emanating from them, something intelligent and aware. They're alive, Kale whispered to himself. His voice sounded strange in the quiet forest, as though speaking it aloud made it more real. He crouched closer, examining the lock on the cage. The metal was thick, but it had signs of wear. With careful hands and a few tools he carried, Kale began to work. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Every snap of a twig in the distance made him freeze, but finally, with a soft click, the lock fell away. Kale held his breath, praying that the creatures would not panic. At first, they were silent. Then, one by one, the small wolf-like hatchlings emerged. Their fur glowed brighter in the dim light, casting a soft radiance around them. They sniffed the air cautiously, then froze as they sensed Kale. Their eyes met his, and Kale felt a strange warmth. The creatures were intelligent, aware, and recognizing him as a friend, or at least not a threat. "Hey, it's okay," Kale whispered, extending a hand slowly. One of the hatchlings, slightly larger than the others, stepped forward, its small nose twitching. It sniffed Kale's fingers, then nuzzled them gently. A soft, happy whine escaped its throat. Kale smiled, but relief was short-lived. The ground beneath them vibrated faintly, a deep rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Kale's stomach sank. He knew that sound. It was the approach of the Alien Queen's warriors. "They know we're here," he muttered, gathering the hatchlings close. They clung to him instinctively, their glowing fur wrapping him in light. Kale's mind raced. There was no way he could fight 10 elite alien warriors in the open forest, not with just a few hatchlings by his side. He needed a plan, and fast. The first warrior appeared like a shadow, tall and menacing, with armor that shimmered in dark colors. Behind it, another 9 followed, moving with precision and terrifying coordination. Kale's heart hammered, but he refused to panic. He had faced danger before, and humans survived not just by strength, but by ingenuity and courage. "Back away slowly," Kale whispered to the hatchlings, guiding them toward a narrow tunnel he had noticed near the edge of the cave. The warriors' eyes glowed faintly through their helmets, scanning for heat signatures and movement. One of them extended a claw-like hand, releasing a pulse that illuminated the trees. The hatchlings yipped in alarm, but Kale held them steady, keeping his own breathing slow. As they slipped into the tunnel, Kale felt a surge of hope. The hatchlings moved with surprising agility, their small bodies climbing over roots and rocks as though they belonged to the forest itself. Kale followed, careful not to make a sound. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move single file. It was a tight fit, and Kale's shoulder brushed against the walls, scraping lightly. He ignored it. Escape was the only option. When they emerged on the other side, the forest opened into a vast valley. Bioluminescent flowers dotted the ground, and a river reflected the twin moons above. Kale allowed himself a brief moment of awe, but there was no time to admire the view. From the ridge above, the warriors could see them. The elite warriors' weapons glowed as they activated, casting beams that scanned the valley. Kale realized that they had only a few minutes before pursuit would intensify. The hatchlings sensed his urgency. Their small bodies radiated a soft, pulsing light, almost like a signal. Kale's mind raced, trying to figure out how to use the terrain to his advantage. He remembered the stories of humans in history, facing overwhelming odds and surviving through strategy and courage. That's what he would have to do now. "Follow me," Kale said, leading the hatchlings toward the river. The water was shallow here, and Kale used it to mask their heat signatures. The hatchlings moved silently beside him, their glowing fur dimming to blend with the surroundings. He could hear the faint shouts of the warriors in the distance, and the roar of the alien queen echoed faintly through the trees. Kale's mind drifted briefly. Who was this alien queen, and why were these hatchlings so important? He had seen records of Zarha's conquests in distant galaxies. Entire species had been enslaved or eradicated for her ambitions. And now, she wanted these hatchlings, small creatures, but clearly possessing incredible potential. Kale felt a surge of determination. If he could survive this night, he would protect them at any cost. Suddenly, one of the hatchlings stopped and growled softly. Kale froze. A patrol of 2 elite warriors had flanked the valley and were closing in silently, their sensors barely visible under their cloaks. Kale's mind worked frantically. He picked up a branch, snapping it deliberately. The noise drew the warriors' attention for just a moment, long enough for Kale to signal the hatchlings. They moved in unison, small but fierce. One of the hatchlings leapt toward a tree, clawing at a weak branch until it snapped and fell, narrowly missing one of the warriors. Another charged at the ground, kicking up dirt to create a sudden cloud of dust. Kale used the distraction to push forward, guiding the hatchlings toward a dense thicket. The warriors were skilled, but they had not expected the hatchlings' intelligence. The creatures moved with strategy, anticipating the aliens' moves, creating confusion and slowing their pursuit. Kale felt a surge of pride. These were no ordinary animals, they were allies, and together they could survive. Hours passed in a tense chase, the forest twisting around them like a living maze. Kale led the hatchlings through hidden paths, over rivers, and under fallen logs. Each obstacle was used to their advantage. Finally, as dawn broke over the horizon, they reached a secluded valley far from the cave and the warriors. The hatchlings collapsed, exhausted but alive. Kale knelt beside them, catching his breath. He looked out toward the forest. He knew this was only the beginning. The alien queen would not give up. Her 10 elite warriors were relentless, and she would come for them again. But Kale also knew this. Humans survived against impossible odds not just with weapons, but with courage, wit, and the ability to care for others. And he had just proven that, even in a world of alien threats, one human could make a difference. As the hatchlings curled around him, their glowing fur warming his skin, Kale felt a strange sense of hope. Perhaps this strange alliance could change everything, not just for them, but for the planet itself. Somewhere in the shadows, the distant roar of the alien queen echoed again, a reminder that danger was far from over. But Kale was ready. He would protect these creatures. He would fight, and together they might just survive the night. Kale woke to the soft glow of Zarinthia's twin suns filtering through the trees. The hatchlings stirred beside him, their fur pulsing gently like tiny lanterns in the early morning light. For a brief moment, all was calm, and Kale allowed himself to relax. But he knew better than to believe the peace would last. The alien queen would not forget the theft of her captives. The forest around them seemed alive, full of whispering leaves and distant calls of strange creatures. Kale studied the hatchlings. Each one had a distinct pattern in its glowing fur. Some shimmered in blues and greens, others in reds and golds. He realized these patterns weren't just for show, they shifted with emotion and focus. The creatures were communicating, perhaps even coordinating their thoughts. Kale had seen intelligent animals before, but this was different. They were like a small army, small yet capable. He stood and stretched, carefully scanning the surroundings. The valley was isolated, but the paths leading out were open to the sky. That meant Zarha's warriors could see them from above, using the drones and sensors he had glimpsed before. Kale needed a plan. Running blindly would only lead them into a trap. "Okay, little ones," Kale murmured, crouching near the largest hatchling, whose glowing stripes formed a pattern that resembled a crown. "We need to move, but we need to stay hidden." The hatchlings reacted immediately. They huddled close, their fur dimming to blend with the shadows. One of them, the boldest, sniffed the air and gave a low, urgent growl. Kale nodded. He trusted their instincts. They had survived captivity, and their intelligence was remarkable. They moved carefully, slipping between trees and using the thick undergrowth for cover. Kale noticed the hatchlings occasionally signaling with tiny movements, tails twitching or ears tilting. It was like they were reading the forest, mapping safe paths and warning him of danger. He smiled despite the tension. He had never seen such a perfect partnership between human and alien creatures. As they crept forward, Kale spotted the first signs of pursuit. Small energy pulses flickered faintly through the trees, a tracking device. One of the hatchlings leapt and struck the device with a paw. It exploded in a harmless flash of sparks, signaling their awareness. Kale's heart lifted. These creatures were not only intelligent but brave. Together they could fight, hide, and outsmart their enemies. The day passed with careful stealth. Kale led them through streams and over moss-covered rocks, always alert. The hatchlings helped silently, knocking down loose branches to create diversions and stepping on weak branches to mask their passage. Kale felt a deep sense of pride. Humans had survived countless dangers through wit and courage, and now he realized they could survive even in an alien world, if they worked with allies who shared their determination. As evening approached, Kale spotted a ridge overlooking a vast plain. The view was breathtaking, rolling forests stretching into the distance, punctuated by strange crystalline formations that shimmered in the fading light. But Kale had little time for admiration. From above, faint glimmers indicated drones scanning the valley for heat signatures. The warriors were getting closer. Kale gathered the hatchlings. "We need a plan," he said. He examined the terrain. The ridge could serve as a choke point. If they could reach it before the warriors, they might be able to hold them off long enough to escape further. The hatchlings seemed to understand. Their glowing fur brightened as if confirming their readiness. The journey to the ridge was tense. The forest seemed to sense the danger too, shadows stretching and twisting as if warning them. Kale and the hatchlings moved swiftly but cautiously. Twice, they encountered patrols of the elite warriors, each time using clever distractions and the hatchlings' abilities to mislead them. One hatchling jumped onto a branch, releasing a cloud of spores that confused the warriors' sensors. Another leapt into a small stream, creating a reflection that mimicked Kale's movements and drew attention away from their actual path. By nightfall, they reached the ridge. Kale looked out over the plain, his heart racing. The alien queen's warriors were below, their glowing weapons scanning methodically. He realized they were being surrounded. The hatchlings growled softly, sensing the danger. Kale placed himself in the center with the creatures around him. He had no intention of giving up. Humans had always faced overwhelming odds and found a way through. Tonight would be no different. The warriors moved up the ridge, their steps deliberate. Kale's mind raced. He had to use every bit of knowledge, every instinct. He spotted loose rocks and branches that could serve as traps. The hatchlings seemed to sense his plan and moved into position. One of the smaller ones crept ahead, unnoticed, and nudged a rock precariously balanced on the edge of a cliff. Another pushed a branch toward a narrow path. When the warriors reached the ridge, Kale triggered the first trap. The rock tumbled down the slope, striking a patrol unit and sending it sliding harmlessly into the forest below. The hatchlings darted through the shadows, their glowing fur flickering like fireflies, confusing the remaining warriors. Kale seized the moment and led the creatures further along the ridge, deeper into a series of narrow canyons. The chase continued, relentless and exhausting. Kale could hear the warriors communicating in clicks and hisses, their coordination impressive but not perfect. The hatchlings' intelligence allowed them to anticipate movements, creating diversions and setting small obstacles. Kale marveled at their skill. They were not just animals, they were partners, equals in strategy and courage. Hours later, they reached a cave system hidden beneath a rocky overhang. Kale and the hatchlings slipped inside, panting and exhausted. The glow from the hatchlings lit the walls in soft, shifting patterns, casting eerie shadows. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to sit and rest. The hatchlings curled around him, their warmth comforting. "This is going to be a long night," Kale murmured. "But we've made it this far, we'll make it further." As he spoke, the hatchlings' glowing patterns shifted, almost as if they were communicating with him. Kale realized they were not just animals with instincts. They were thinking, analyzing, planning. He felt a deep respect for them. Humanity had always been resourceful, capable of forging alliances even in the most desperate circumstances. These creatures, small and glowing though they were, shared that same spark of intelligence and courage. Outside, the forest was quiet, but Kale knew it was only a temporary lull. The alien queen would not give up. Her 10 elite warriors were relentless and she would come for them again. Kale's mind raced with possibilities, traps, diversions, and ways to stay ahead. He needed to understand the hatchlings' abilities fully. Their intelligence was extraordinary, and together they could outwit even the most dangerous adversaries. Kale spent the next few hours observing them. One hatchling could sense vibrations in the earth, predicting approaching footsteps. Another seemed to manipulate small energy fields, enough to confuse sensors. A third communicated through patterns in its glowing fur, sending complex signals to the others. Kale realized these abilities could be decisive if he learned to work with them. By the time the second day dawned, Kale had formed a tentative plan. They would move under cover of darkness, using the hatchlings' abilities to mask their presence and confuse any sensors. The journey would be dangerous, but it was their only chance. He had never felt such a close bond with creatures before. These hatchlings trusted him completely, and he felt a responsibility unlike anything he had ever known. As night fell, Kale and the hatchlings set off again. The forest was alive with sounds of alien life, but the creatures moved silently, leading him along hidden paths. Kale noticed their intelligence growing with each passing hour. They anticipated obstacles, avoided traps, and even guided him towards safer terrain. He marveled at the synergy between human ingenuity and alien instinct. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. Hours later, from a hidden vantage point, Kale saw a patrol of the elite warriors below. He signaled the hatchlings, and they executed a coordinated diversion. Branches snapped, rocks tumbled, and faint glowing trails led the warriors away from their true path. Kale and the hatchlings slipped past unnoticed, moving further into the safety of the dense forest. For the first time, Kale felt a surge of hope. Against overwhelming odds, with alien warriors pursuing them and the alien queen herself searching, he had survived. The hatchlings were more than allies. They were a testament to the intelligence and resilience that existed in the universe. And Kale realized that humans, too, had that spark. Courage, ingenuity, and empathy were powerful weapons, sometimes stronger than any advanced technology. As they settled briefly to rest, Kale watched the hatchlings' glowing patterns ripple in the dark. He knew the chase was far from over. The alien queen would not stop, and the warriors would come again. But Kale also knew something else. With these creatures by his side, he had a chance. Together, they could face any threat, overcome any obstacle, and perhaps even change the fate of Zorinthia itself. The night stretched on, filled with soft whispers of leaves and distant calls of unseen creatures. Kale felt a sense of unity he had never experienced before. Human and alien, small but brave, moving as one through the darkness. The forest seemed to watch them, acknowledging their courage and perhaps even offering its own protection. Somewhere in the distance, the roar of the alien queen echoed faintly, a reminder that danger was never far away. Kale tightened his grip on the hatchlings, whispering softly, "We'll face her, and we'll win, together." The forest was quiet, but Kale knew it was a dangerous calm. The hatchlings moved around him, their glowing fur pulsating softly in the dim light of Zorinthia's twin moons. Every shadow could hide a threat, every rustle could be the advance of the alien queen's elite warriors. He had come to understand that survival in this world required more than courage. It demanded strategy, quick thinking, and trust in unlikely allies. Kale crouched near the edge of a small ravine, peering down into a clearing. There, bathed in faint moonlight, he saw them, all 10 of Zyrha's elite warriors. Their armor shimmered in the darkness, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They were searching for him, scanning for movement with sensors that Kale knew could detect even the slightest heat signature. He exhaled slowly and knelt beside the hatchlings. "This is it," he whispered. "We face them together." The hatchlings responded instinctively. Their fur glowed brighter, shifting into intricate patterns that seemed to communicate with each other. Kale realized that they were not just creatures, they were a coordinated force. Their intelligence and abilities, combined with human ingenuity, gave him hope. They would need every advantage to survive this confrontation. He studied the terrain. The clearing was surrounded by dense trees and jagged rocks, offering natural cover. Kale began to set small traps, using loose rocks and fallen branches. The hatchlings worked alongside him, leaping silently to position themselves and manipulating the environment in ways he hadn't imagined. One hatchling struck a loose branch, sending it teetering to create a distraction, while another nudged a small boulder to the edge of a slope. Every move was precise, every action part of a larger plan. When the warriors advanced, their boots crunching over leaves and debris, Kale felt the tension tighten like a coil. They were fast, coordinated, and relentless. But Kale had something they didn't: creativity, improvisation, and allies who could think in ways they could not predict. The first clash was sudden. A boulder tumbled down the slope, striking one warrior and throwing him off balance. Another warrior's weapon was momentarily blocked by a spray of bioluminescent spores released by one of the hatchlings. The creatures darted around like flickering shadows, confusing the warriors and drawing them into traps. Kale moved quickly, using his agility to stay hidden while directing the hatchlings to exploit weaknesses in the warriors' formation. Zyrha's voice echoed faintly through the forest, calm yet commanding. "You think your allies can save you, human? They are mine to control." Kale ignored the voice, focusing on the immediate threat. He had learned long ago that fear and intimidation were tools the powerful used to weaken the resolve of the brave. Humans had faced insurmountable odds countless times, using intelligence, empathy, and courage to survive. And Kale would do the same. The battle escalated. The warriors' weapons fired beams of energy, lighting up the night. Kale ducked behind a tree, feeling the heat from a blast pass inches from him. The hatchlings responded instantly, leaping to deflect attacks and create diversions. One of them darted toward a warrior, distracting him just long enough for Kale to throw a sharp branch and knock the weapon from his hand. Despite the chaos, Kale noticed patterns. The warriors moved predictably when faced with certain distractions. He began to anticipate their actions, guiding the hatchlings with subtle gestures. The creatures responded flawlessly, working as a single, intelligent unit. Kale realized that this synergy, the combination of human strategy and alien instinct, was their greatest weapon. Zyrha herself appeared on the ridge, towering above the trees, her presence commanding and terrifying. "You are clever, human," she said, her voice echoing with authority. "But cleverness alone will not save you. My warriors will overwhelm you, and I will claim what is mine." Kale stood his ground. "We will not be taken," he said, his voice steady. "Not the hatchlings. Not this forest. Not me." The hatchlings responded immediately, their glowing patterns intensifying as if feeding off his determination. They moved with extraordinary precision, anticipating Zyrha's strategies before she could execute them. Kale marveled at their intelligence, realizing that these small creatures possessed abilities far beyond mere instinct. The elite warriors advanced in formation, attempting to surround them. Kale's mind raced. He had to split them up, create confusion, and exploit their overconfidence. He signaled the hatchlings, and together they executed a daring maneuver. One hatchling darted through a narrow crevice, luring 3 warriors into a trap. Branches fell, rocks tumbled, and the path behind them collapsed. Another hatchling created a sudden flash of bioluminescent light, disorienting the remaining warriors. Kale used the opening to move forward, attacking with precision and agility. He didn't rely on brute strength, he relied on wit. Humans had survived wars and disasters because they could think, adapt, and outmaneuver stronger opponents. And here in this alien forest, he was doing exactly that with allies who shared his determination. Hours passed in a blur of motion, strategy, and instinct. The warriors were formidable, but they were not perfect. Each move Kale made, each decision the hatchlings executed weakened their formation. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Kale felt a surge of hope not born from power but from unity, intelligence, and courage. Finally, Kale found himself facing Zyrha directly. She was immense, her armor gleaming, her presence overwhelming. "You dare defy me?" she demanded. "I protect those who cannot protect themselves," Kale replied. "That is what humans do, that is what makes us strong." The hatchlings leapt forward, attacking her defenses with coordinated precision. Their glowing fur flared, sending pulses of energy that disrupted her weapon systems. Kale took the opening to advance, moving with speed and focus. Zyrha tried to counter, but the hatchlings' tactics were unpredictable, intelligent, and daring. One by one, the elite warriors were defeated or forced to retreat. Their formations broken, their strategy undone by a combination of human cunning and alien intelligence. Kale felt a sense of triumph, but he knew the real challenge remained: Zyrha herself. She advanced, her steps deliberate and powerful. Kale stayed calm, analyzing her movements, waiting for the moment to act. The hatchlings surrounded him, their glowing patterns forming a protective barrier. Kale realized that together they were more than a human and a few creatures. They were a force, a combination of intellect, courage, and instinct that even the alien queen had underestimated. Zyrha struck, and Kale dodged, moving with speed and precision. He used the terrain, the rocks, and the hatchlings' abilities to counter her every move. The forest seemed to aid them, shadows shifting, terrain providing cover. Kale felt an exhilaration unlike anything he had experienced. He was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the future of these creatures, for the forest, and for the belief that courage and intelligence could prevail even against overwhelming power. The climax came when Kale and the hatchlings executed a final, daring maneuver. The hatchlings created a coordinated distraction, using their bioluminescent patterns to confuse Zyrha's sensors and disrupt her weapons. Kale seized the moment, moving swiftly to force a standoff. Zyrha paused, recognizing the strength of their combined efforts. "You are clever," she admitted, her voice calm but tinged with frustration. "Perhaps more clever than I anticipated." Kale stood firm. "We are not just clever, we are determined. We protect what is important, and we will not be broken." Zyrha's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Kale saw hesitation. She realized that her power, though immense, was not absolute. The intelligence, courage, and determination of humans, combined with the abilities of the hatchlings, had created something she could not easily overcome. With a final roar, Zyrha retreated, signaling her remaining warriors to fall back. The forest seemed to exhale in relief. Kale lowered himself, exhausted but victorious, as the hatchlings nuzzled against him, their glowing fur dimming softly. They had survived the confrontation, outsmarted a far superior force, and forged a bond that was unbreakable. Kale realized that this was more than just a victory. It was proof of something fundamental. Human courage, ingenuity, and empathy could overcome even the most powerful adversaries. And when combined with allies who shared those values, even a small group could change the course of events in a world ruled by strength and fear. As the forest settled into silence, Kale allowed himself a moment to breathe. The hatchlings were safe, the alien queen had retreated, and for now the forest was theirs. He looked at the glowing creatures, feeling a deep sense of respect and admiration. They had fought bravely, and together they had achieved what seemed impossible. Kale knew the journey was not over. The alien queen would return and new challenges would arise. But he also knew this: humans, when driven by courage and empathy, could make a difference. The hatchlings had shown him that intelligence and bravery could exist in forms he had never imagined. And together, they had proven that even the smallest beings could overcome the mightiest of foes. In that moment, under the soft light of Zorinthia's moons, Kale and the hatchlings stood together, ready for whatever came next. They were a team, united by trust, courage, and the belief that even in the face of overwhelming power, determination and ingenuity could prevail. And with that belief, Kale knew they could face anything the universe had to throw at them. The forest was quiet after the battle, but Kale did not allow himself to relax completely. He knew that the alien queen, Zyrha, was clever and relentless. Retreating today did not mean defeat. She would regroup and return. Yet Kale felt a strange sense of calm. They had survived. The hatchlings, glowing softly around him, were unharmed. For the first time, he allowed himself to look at them closely, really see them. Each hatchling was unique. Their fur shimmered with colors that seemed to reflect their emotions. The boldest one, whose crown-like pattern glowed brightly, nudged Kale gently with its nose. He smiled. "We made it this far," he whispered, "and together we can go even further." Kale knew he had to find a safe place for them, somewhere hidden from Zyrha's reach. The forest was vast, but there were few areas where the hatchlings could truly be safe. He led them toward a series of crystalline cliffs he had spotted earlier. The cliffs were steep and treacherous, but they offered cover and high vantage points. If the hatchlings could climb and hide there, no ordinary warrior could reach them easily. As they moved through the dense undergrowth, Kale reflected on the events of the past 2 days. These hatchlings were no ordinary creatures. They were intelligent, strategic, and capable of incredible feats. They had fought alongside him, anticipating moves he hadn't even thought of. In many ways, they had saved him as much as he had saved them. They reached the cliffs as dawn broke, casting long shadows over the forest below. Kale helped the hatchlings climb to ledges and crevices where they could remain hidden. The largest hatchling looked back at him, almost as if to say, "We trust you." Kale felt a surge of pride and responsibility. He had not only freed them from captivity, but had also earned their trust. That trust was precious and rare, and he vowed to protect it. The day passed in careful observation. Kale watched the surrounding forest, alert for signs of Zyrha or her remaining warriors. He realized that while they had won the confrontation, the war was not over. The alien queen would return, and she would bring reinforcements. But Kale also understood something important. Intelligence, courage, and strategy could outmatch even overwhelming power. Humans had always survived in impossible situations, and now he had proof that cooperation with other intelligent beings could create an unstoppable force. He observed the hatchlings closely, learning their habits and abilities. One could sense vibrations in the ground, alerting them to approaching footsteps. Another could manipulate small energy fields to confuse sensors and disorient enemies. Yet another communicated complex signals with its glowing fur, coordinating the group silently. Kale realized that these abilities, combined with human ingenuity, made them a formidable team. By evening, Kale began to train with them, testing their abilities and developing strategies for future encounters. They moved through obstacle courses of fallen logs, narrow crevices, and rocky slopes. Kale guided them, but he also learned from them. Their instincts were flawless, and their intelligence allowed them to anticipate his actions. Together, they created a rhythm, a synergy that felt natural and powerful. Night fell, and Kale and the hatchlings settled on the cliffs, overlooking the forest below. The moonlight reflected off the crystalline formations, casting shimmering patterns across the rocks. Kale felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he understood that survival was not just about fighting or hiding. It was about connection, trust, and mutual respect. The hatchlings had become more than allies. They were companions, equals, and friends. Suddenly, Kale sensed movement in the forest below. His instincts screamed caution. He crouched, signaling the hatchlings to be ready. Through the trees, he saw faint lights flickering. Drones, Zyrha's scouts. She had not given up. Kale's mind raced, but he remained calm. The hatchlings were ready, and so was he. Together, they could face whatever came. As the drones approached, the hatchlings acted instinctively. They moved to positions that maximized their abilities, creating confusion and masking their presence. One released a cloud of spores that interfered with the sensors. Another darted along the cliff edge, reflecting the moonlight in a way that created false heat signatures. Kale stayed hidden, observing and learning. Humans survived by thinking, adapting, and exploiting every advantage, and that's exactly what they were doing. The drones searched for hours, but Kale and the hatchlings remained undetected. Finally, the lights retreated and the forest returned to silence. Kale exhaled, feeling both relief and pride. They had survived another test. He looked at the hatchlings, their glowing fur dimming to a soft, comforting light. He realized that they had not only survived, they had thrived. Over the following days, Kale and the hatchlings explored the cliffs and surrounding forest, mapping safe paths and hidden shelters. Kale taught the hatchlings how to use the terrain to their advantage, while they taught him to observe, anticipate, and adapt in ways he had never imagined. Together, they became a team, a unit capable of surviving anything the forest or the alien queen could throw at them. Kale also realized that the hatchlings were not just survivors, they were potential protectors of Zorinthia. The planet had been under threat for centuries, its forests and creatures oppressed by Zyrha and her forces. By freeing the hatchlings, Kale had not only saved them, but had also sparked hope for the entire planet. If these creatures could survive and thrive, they could protect the forest, maintain balance, and resist oppression. The hatchlings, in turn, recognized Kale as a leader and protector. Their trust in him was complete, and they followed his guidance without hesitation. Kale felt a profound sense of responsibility. Humans had always relied on alliances and cooperation to survive and achieve great things. Now, he had formed an alliance that transcended species, a bond built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun set behind the crystalline cliffs, Kale watched the hatchlings play and explore. Their glowing fur illuminated the rocks in soft, shifting patterns. He felt a surge of hope. They had survived the alien queen's wrath, they had outsmarted her warriors, and they had formed a bond that could not be broken. The forest itself seemed to recognize their presence. shadows shifting and leaves whispering in approval. Kale knew the alien queen would return, but he was ready. Together, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and empathy could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. Humans had always faced impossible odds and survived. And now, with the hatchlings by his side, Kale felt capable of facing anything. Days passed, and Kale and the hatchlings continued to explore and secure their territory. They discovered hidden caves, safe water sources, and areas rich in food. The hatchlings' intelligence amazed him constantly. They communicated complex ideas through gestures and glowing patterns, coordinating their movements with precision. Kale realized that these creatures were not just animals, they were partners in every sense of the word. One morning, Kale climbed to the highest point of the cliffs, overlooking the forest. The sun rose, casting golden light across the trees. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had survived, adapted, and thrived. The hatchlings gathered around him, their glowing fur forming intricate patterns that seemed almost celebratory. Kale smiled, feeling a bond stronger than anything he had ever known. He knew this was only the beginning. The alien queen would return, and new challenges would arise. But Kale also knew that humans, when guided by courage, ingenuity, and empathy, could make a difference. The hatchlings had shown him that intelligence and bravery could exist in forms he had never imagined, and together, they had proven that even the smallest beings could overcome the mightiest foes. Kale settled among the hatchlings, feeling their warmth and trust. He realized that this alliance was more than survival, it was a new beginning. Humans and alien creatures, united by courage and intelligence, could face any threat. Together, they had changed the balance of power on Zorinthia, and they would continue to protect it. As the day turned to night, Kale looked at the horizon. The forest stretched endlessly, full of mysteries and dangers, but also full of life and hope. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and the hatchlings would face them together. They had proven that even in a universe filled with powerful enemies, determination, empathy, and intelligence could triumph. The glow of the hatchlings lit the cliffs, a reminder that even the smallest beings could make a difference. Kale felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had survived through courage and ingenuity, and now he had witnessed the same qualities in another species. Together, they had become a force capable of shaping the future of Zorinthia. As the stars appeared in the sky, Kale whispered softly to the hatchlings, "We will face whatever comes. Together, we are stronger than anything the universe can throw at us." The hatchlings responded with soft, harmonious howls, a sound of unity and determination. Kale knew they were ready for the future, ready to protect their world and each other. In that moment, Kale felt a profound connection, not just with the hatchlings, but with the very essence of courage and determination that had always defined humanity. He realized that survival was not just about strength or skill. It was about empathy, intelligence, and the willingness to fight for what is right. And with that knowledge, Kale knew they could face anything. The forest around them was alive, but for the first time, Kale felt completely at peace. They had survived, they had grown stronger, and they had formed a bond that would last a lifetime. The alien queen's shadow still lingered, but Kale knew that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome any darkness. Together, they would protect Zorinthia and perhaps even change its destiny forever.